You're listening to The Support Report with Be Present, where we share real stories from young adults and how support changed their lives.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Support Report. We are Be Present. I am your host, Justin, and as always, joined by my co-host, Kiara Riga. Kiara, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Justin?
Doing great. Who do we have with us today?
Oh, I am so excited to introduce our guest. We have the lovely Jess Walker with us today. Jess got married to her husband, Tommy, in August of 2017. And in October of the same year, her husband was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. So this put her career in musical theater acting on pause as she took the role as caregiver. In 2018, she created a line of cards for people in the cancer community, and her shop went from nothing to full-time in 6 months. If you haven't checked out 5 Dot postcards yet, here's your sign to do so. They're all amazing. She's also the author of Better Together, a book to help navigate the cancer experience, and the Better Book Cancer Treatment Planner, which sold almost 5,000 copies in a year. So Jessica, welcome to the podcast. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, do you want to start off by just telling us a little bit more of your story and Tommy's story?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, we were married in 2017. All of that year, Tommy's had been a healthy person. He never really had any major health issues. All that we had noticed was that he had been having a little trouble swallowing and had been losing some weight, but he had also been actively trying to get in shape for the wedding. It was just like, it was wedding year. So like things got like, appointments we're like, we'll push it. We'll do it after the wedding. He's working out. So it kind of makes sense that he's losing weight. Like it wasn't enough of red flags for us to really freak out and like figure out what's going on early. We actually had seen a doctor earlier that year, and they had said that he was too young for it to be anything serious, which I know is a common theme that I know a lot of people who've gone through that similar experience, where red flags are pushed off because of age. Esophageal cancer is something that you get in your 60s, 70s, 80s, particularly at stage 3, which is what he was diagnosed with by the time he was diagnosed in October. So once he was diagnosed, he was 26, quite young for that diagnosis. And we went straight into, we are going to fight this with everything we have. We have age on our side. He's healthy. We have a lot, like obviously statistic wise, it was very scary, but we were like, we're not a number. We are going to do this. We are going to fight this. And we put everything we could into his fight. And he went straight into a major surgery to have an esophagectomy and have part of his stomach removed. He went through chemo, radiation, clinical trials. We had a really successful year where he was on an immunotherapy clinical trial that had him with almost no symptoms. It was incredible. We're huge advocates for immunotherapy research because of that. And it ended up, we really did anything and everything that science had available for us at this time. And Tommy did pass away on Thanksgiving of this past year. So just about 5 months ago, after just the most incredible fight. And it was a true honor to be by his side through all of that. And we learned a lot about each other through it. I feel like I know that we only had a 4-year marriage, but it feels like we had a 40-year marriage because everything we went through was so intense, and you can just like remove all of the things that don't matter and like the little bickering, like all of that stuff we just didn't have time for. So we really got to be like solid as a rock foundation, really focused on what was important. And he said it, I've said it, that it's just like he did more in 30 years than most people do in 100. And I think it's just because of the spirit he had, the energy that he brought to everything, the passion he brought to everything. And like, and he was there with me the whole time that I decided to start this business. He was the reason I started this business, of course. But he was constantly a sounding board. He always encouraged me. And while he was in hospice at the end, he told me he really wanted me to continue on if it felt right for me as well. And it absolutely does. And I'm just I'm really excited to see what 5 Post can become, because I am absolutely still committed to serving the cancer community. I have seen just what incredible people they are. And if there's anything I can do to make the journey slightly lighter, funnier, if that can be a thing, which I really am passionate about it being. Our big thing was, if you can't laugh about it, it can just be way too heavy. And yeah, so I'm just kind of not getting back, I'm never going to get back, but I'm just now figuring out what my next chapter looks like. And it definitely does include 5 Post and continuing this mission and this spirit that Tommy brought over the last 4 years.
I love that so much. I'm so sorry he got pushed away with the age thing. The same thing happened to me. For context, I have metastatic breast cancer, and for a year I was told, oh, it's just a cyst, you're too young. So know that one very well. But I just think your experience with your husband is really incredible, that you guys got to share this together, and that's really amazing that you're able to keep everything going in his memory. So I wanted to ask what it was like for you to be a caregiver. I think a lot of times, honestly, I think the job of the caregiver, this is probably a controversial opinion, but I think the job of the caregiver is harder than the job of the patient, because you're watching someone you love go through all of this. You're doing everything, and there's so little support for you. Everyone's asking how your husband is. So I'd love to hear what that experience was like for you.
It is funny you say that. Tommy, I had that argument all the time, and I would be like, he's like, your job is so much harder. And I'm like, I'm not the one going through it. He's like, I'm just sitting in this chair. Like, he's like, you're doing all, and I know he was joking. And I do think that the role of the patient is harder, but I think that my journey with being a caregiver had a couple highs and lows that were pretty important. In the beginning, I wanted to do everything 100% by myself. And I think I've now realized the reason was because if I needed help, it meant that it was too big and like too scary for me to handle. And I think in order for me to mentally like minimize it, I was like, if I can do this by myself, it's okay. Like it's manageable. So from November or like October when he was diagnosed through about February, 100% of my energy went to helping Tommy. And although 100% of my energy went to helping Tommy for 4 years, it looked different. It didn't look like putting all of my own needs aside, never asking for help. I went so hard without focusing any attention to my well-being that I got really, really sick in February. I don't know if it was the flu, but it was something similar. And it became to a point I was trying to help Tommy and support him so well and so perfectly that I was no longer able to be in a room with him because he was immunocompromised on chemo and I was sick. And I was like, okay, we need to reevaluate. And that was kind of a turning point for me as a caregiver. I realized that asking for help didn't mean, like, I know that our brains are meaning making machines. Like it doesn't mean anything about the situation. It's just, I needed help. It was just a fact. And as soon as I started inviting that in, as soon as I started taking care of my mental health, getting therapy, I was able to shift that balance to be able to be a better caregiver because I as they say, like putting your own oxygen mask on first. I know we've heard that a million times, but like, it really is true. And I know that it's hard to impart that onto a caregiver, especially at the beginning, because you feel like any time that you are spending on yourself feels like you're not spending it on them. Like if I would go on a 10-minute walk around the neighborhood, I'm like, well, what if Tommy needs me? Like he's the one going through cancer. What am I doing? Like those kinds of thoughts are so easy to just push aside. And I know it's like kind of like you have to go through it on your own to like realize. And I don't think everyone has to crash and burn before you shift. But if I can maybe help you do that shift a little bit earlier, it really makes you a better caregiver. It makes you a better partner in my situation. And that was pretty important. I was lucky that I had a really incredible support system. I did have people regularly message me and be like, how are you doing? Like, I know that people ask about Tommy, how are you doing? And that was helpful. And I actively do try to do that as well with friends or people I know that are going through that. I always check in on the caregiver. But yeah, I think that's kind of an overview of how that journey looked.
Yeah. I'm curious. You come in with a unique perspective. I was actually surprised to find out you didn't really know a whole lot about cancer prior to Tommy's diagnosis. I think like you, I called it cancer doctor. I didn't actually like know the right terminology. And then on top of that, you're 53 days into a marriage as well. So you're balancing both marriage and a cancer diagnosis. I'm guessing that had to be a pretty big challenge for you.
Yes, it was. I remember and I think you're going through denial at the beginning too, where it's like before you get the actual diagnosis, you're like, there's a million things this could be. Like, I'm not even going to think about that. So I wasn't actively researching cancer diagnoses and oncologists and what esophageal cancer meant. And the thing is that, we were 26, like, it's not something that people just gather data on just to like prepare in case. No one prepares for something that you don't expect is going to happen normally. So we were at the ER the first night. It was a long story. We really didn't need to get the ER, but we were terrified and didn't know what to do. And someone was like, well, you should get an oncologist at Sloan. And I was like, what is Sloan? Like, what is this? And they're like, oh, you're not from New York. And I'm like, no, I'm not from cancer. Like, I don't know what this means. Like, and it was just, I felt so absolutely lost. And that was where I do think I'm a very, I don't know if stubborn's the right word, but I really have a difficult time waiting and taking no for an answer when it's like Tommy's health was in the mix. And I was on the phone just for, I feel like 48 hours trying to put things together. And it was like, we were getting no after no after no. He was stage 3 cancer, like esophageal cancer. And we were hearing from oncologists, they couldn't get us in for 6 months. And if he hadn't had his surgery, he wouldn't have made it 6 months. So I'm trying to explain, like, he's 26. Like, I was just like, and that was Saturday night, and we had an oncologist appointment Monday afternoon. And I was like, anyway, so I feel like I had this like fire that really helped, I think, speed up that beginning stage. But the thing is that I didn't realize how important advocating for yourself was. That was the very beginning of me realizing that, advocating for Tommy and for our situation. Because if I had just, I feel like it would have been so easy to be like, okay, cool, I don't know anything about cancer, I'll see you in 6 months, and just like put it on the calendar. And instead, I like, for some reason, I did go after it. And now realizing how incredibly important that was, that was a through line through our entire journey. Was, this doesn't feel right. What are my options? I want to ask every question in the book. Why is this what I'm being presented? Like, it was difficult for Tommy and I, because we were both very people pleasing, very agreeable. Like, it's easy for us to just like smile and nod. And we had to become people who stood up for ourselves and like really tuned into what we needed and wanted. And especially at the beginning of our marriage, we had been together for 6 years at that point. So we were very close. It wasn't, although it was the beginning of our marriage and we were kind of navigating that new identity, we were solidly together. But yeah, it's just like, I thought we were supposed to be in our newlywed stage, and instead we were fighting cancer. And it was just like, it felt like the biggest like whiplash to be going from like this like beautiful, innocent, new, fresh thing to just like something we just in no way ever expected, and was just so starkly different to what all of our friends were going through, who were going on their honeymoons and starting to have kids. And we were just in such a different place that it did really feel isolating at times. And that was when I kind of started thinking about there has to be more of us. Like, I don't hope not. Like, obviously I wish there weren't, but there are. And since there are, I want to find them, and I want to connect with them, and I want to find some sense of sameness and like familiarity and support through people that actually know what's going on. Because of course we can send support in a million different ways, but getting support from someone who actually has felt what you feel is so different and is so important. And that's really why I started my card business, because I wanted to connect with these people. I knew their humor, I knew their hearts. Like, I'd been talking to them for months, and it was just like, I feel like there's something I can do to try to make this a little lighter in a way, and it really did stem through that like desire for connection within this community.
Yeah, I hear Kiara talk about that a lot as well. Especially, I know before we started recording, I think you were talking about bringing some humor into the entire experience as well. But Kiara, whenever we were doing some prep for this conversation, was pointing to your cards and she's like, she just gets it. Like she really understands it. And I don't know if you saw the gap whenever you're working. I think you worked like part-time at a card shop or something.
Yeah.
And you saw the gap there. Is that where it kind of initiated, or was there something else that really brought this to light that you're like, I have to make these cards?
I feel like it was just because, again, like everyone we knew who had gone through cancer were our grandparents' friends, our parents' friends, like they're much older. And we were being supported by people with greeting cards a lot. And we really enjoyed receiving them. They were beautiful cards, but they felt a little heavy. It felt like they were very like a flower and like sympathy. And it felt like they were like mourning us, even though we were actively going through the fight. Like we were not in the mindset of this is over. We're not in the mindset of like we're like go, go, go. Like we are fighting this. And we had that sort of it's not like high energy, but it was a different energy than the cards we were receiving. Although beautiful and incredible and really appreciate the support. But I was like, I feel like if I were to receive a card, I remember having this conversation. We were at Thai dinner and I was like, Tommy, like, if you received a card that was just like funny about cancer, like how would that hit? Like, would you be offended or would you feel like how would it feel if you got it? He's like, no, I think that would be hilarious. And honestly, like all I want is to like laugh about it sometimes because it's like, it is so heavy that it like, that was our thing. It's like, I mean, Tommy's was one of the funniest people that I've ever known. And he was a comedian. He was like, the way that we got to the root of really serious conversations was through humor. Humor was always our gateway. We would start making like kind of dark jokes and like kind of sinister, like things like we would say just to like try to like get in there. And then we were able to have like the real conversation. So I was like, what if, the card was funny. And then that was kind of like an icebreaker to be able to get to the root of how you what to say to someone to like really support them. Cause I know I have done this. And this is really the reason I started my cards is that you want to say something, but you don't know what to say. So you end up not saying anything. And I just wanted to make the connecting part a little easier. So if it's like an icebreaker, kind of, if it's like a joke, that's for some reason, like a little easier to send than like just something really heavy, especially if you haven't talked to someone in years. Like we were getting cards from people we hadn't spoken to in years, or like even close friends who just didn't know what to say. It's like, I just wanted to make that first part of the connection a little easier so that then support can come more naturally.
I love that. I had so many people DM me after I went more public with my diagnosis being like, hi, I'm just reaching out to say I don't know what to say. And so I love that you gave like an avenue there. But I'm also very curious what your kind of reception has been like within the cancer community, because we all know we can be a little territorial, shall I say?
Right.
So has it always been positive, or have there been ever any sort of negative experiences?
Honestly, really, I've been incredibly lucky that I've never had any sort of negative feedback from people in the cancer community. I don't think at all. I think that's because I, especially in the early days, was like actively asking for feedback from like through my Instagram. Like, it was really small, but it was like everyone I followed was in the cancer community. There's survivors, caregivers. And I'd be like, what do you guys think of this card? Like, does this hit, or is this like, like, and they would give me the feedback back. So I was able to not only take like my perspective as a caregiver, I would always check with Tommy before I released a card, like, does this work or no? And then I would also like it was a very collaborative situation. So I think like the foundation of my business, like especially those first 100 cards, were created with the cancer community. So I think that really made a difference because absolutely, like I knew that like doing something like trying to make funny cancer cards, irreverent cancer cards, like I was like, this might not work. I haven't seen this before, and this might not be a thing, but I was like, I know that I would want to receive it. And Tommy said he would want to receive one. He's like, I would enjoy that. And I was like, well, then I'm just going to give it a go. Like, if this is something that at least a couple of us think would be good, great. I had no intention of it becoming a full-time business, no intention of it growing really beyond like what it was at the beginning. But as soon as I started getting those messages that were, how did I not know about this shop before? Like, I'm telling everyone that I know about this. Like, I gave it to my doctor, and my doctor framed the card. It's in the office, and it's like, this was the only card I received that felt like they understood. And it's like things like that I was like, I know I'm onto something, and I think it's worth the risk of doing something that hasn't been done. But yeah, if it hasn't been well received, I guess they haven't messaged me. But always feel free to, like, if you see a card and you're like, this missed the mark, please let me know. I love the feedback, because that's the point, is to support the cancer community. So if something ever doesn't hit right, please let me know. And I also do have quite the array now. It's like, I have like sassy cards that are, again, irreverent, funny. I also have really heartfelt, I think, sweet cards that, again, like, I think the thing that's a little different is this, just like, it's not like sympathies or for you in this hard time with like a dark cloud. Like, we've received those cards and I'm like, this is so heavy. It's so sad. Like, I'm already sad. I'm already always thinking about it. And it's just like another reminder that what you're going through is hard and horrible. And it's like, but not like in a way that's like, I get you, I see you, I want to support you. Feel how you want to feel. That was the other thing I wanted to do with the cards. Is like, I do have one that, what you said, that says, I have no idea what to say, but I'm here for you. And like, that sells a lot, because it's like, that's how we all feel. It's like, there's no right thing to say, and you're not going to say the wrong thing. It's just like, reach out, just do it. And I just, like, again, I just want to try to make that part a little bit easier.
I think that's amazing. And I haven't seen any of your cards that look like they missed the mark. They're all spot on. I love them. The first question I had put on our list was like, how does she get it?
She literally told me that. I was like, let's ask her. Let's see.
I don't know, you can just kind of feel if it's like, again, I always ask myself, is this something I would want to receive? I would always ask Tommy, is this something Tommy would want to receive? And now, knowing his humor, knowing like what he is approved of, didn't like for like 4 years, I can just kind of tell like when it's like right, or I need to keep working on it, or if I need to just let it go. And again, if I ever am like not sure, I just ask the community and just get their feedback. And that's been a good system for me so far.
Awesome. So on the flip side of that, does helping other people like support their friends with cancer ever become too much? Like, has this ever been really heavy, having to kind of always be in this world?
So I get this question a lot, and I really like it, because I've had a couple of moments where yes, and I now have a really good balance with it. There were a couple seasons during Tommy's during his treatments and what we were going through that it did feel a little heavy. Like, it was like when we were all day, every day, already at doctors and at treatments, and we would get home for a little bit, and then I would have to be back kind of in that world. It would feel a little heavy. And in those moments, I would kind of just like take a little space, like maybe not blog, because I was blogging and like expressing out everything we're going through. I just like, I have to verbalize it. So I had a blog at that time. And I would kind of like back off a little bit until it just felt good again. But in general, particularly, I've gotten this question a lot in the last couple of weeks, that now that I have started working again after Tommy passed, they're like, are you going to be able to do this, or is it too hard having lost Tommy? And the thing is that I would be lying if I would said that like sometimes a pang didn't like hit as I'm sending out like it happened specifically a couple of days ago. It's like I'm sending out a OMG, your 10 years cancer free card, and I was just like, oh, like it's just like it is hard to think like I can never send this to Tommy, and it is hard, but then it's almost instantaneous that I'm just like, oh my gosh, but how incredible that whoever's receiving this did do that. And it's like, for some reason I'm able to, it just like the joy and the feeling of like sticking it to cancer. I'm just like, they are doing it. They did it. It's so fierce. And in doing that, it feels like I'm honoring Tommy's fight. And it kind of feels like it's like a tiny like revolt or rebellion on my part that I'm just like, yeah, you took him, but guess what? Like people are still doing it and people are here supporting them. And it just like, for some reason, it just like, it really does light me up. And at this point, I can't imagine that the pain that does happen occasionally would ever outweigh the like massive joy and like pride. And I'm seriously, like, I don't even know them. And I'm just like, yes, like I'll literally like say it out loud. I'm like, come on, you did it. Like you're doing it. Or like, I don't know, like there's just something about it that really does feel like I said, like a tiny like rebellion that like I really love. It feels like just like, it's the way that I'm able to fight back a little, even though our fight is technically over.
I love that so much. Wow. And that's so special that you're able to be able to kind of compartmentalize that, because I don't know that I could, but that's really, really amazing. So I know we wanted to talk about empathy today a little bit. And so my big question for you is, how do you empathize with someone when you can't relate to what they're going to, right? Like you weren't the one in the chair receiving infusions, you weren't on the table getting radiation, anything like that. So how did you come to this place where you were able to empathize with Tommy and with all of us?
I think it's really just holding space for what they're going through and hearing, receiving, and not trying to fix. And that was something I really had a hard time with at the beginning. I'm like, I really am a fixer. Like I always want to like fix the problem. And even when Tommy would tell me something good, he's like, oh, like my side's feeling like a little better. I'm like, well, how can we make it even better? And he's like, can you just hear what I'm saying and like let it be? Like I'm telling you it's a good thing. And like that was the thing, like we really had a long, not struggle so much, but it was an open communication for a long time where I was not hitting the mark on that. I really was like, my empathy was like, I hear you, I get it, but let me fix it. And that's not it. That's not it. So I think that like if you can't relate, just hold space, give them the space to give what they need to give, share what they need to share, and don't feel like you have to fix it and don't feel like you have to relate. I feel like that's something that like a lot of people do. I've now figured out or now noticed, like when it comes up that I've lost Tommy, people will try to then like be like, I lost a grandparent too. And it's like, I understand like they're trying to like relate, but you don't have to do that. Like you don't have to like try to match. You can just like receive it and be like, that's honestly like this, I don't know if you can curse on this podcast, but this woman was like, came up to me, she was like 70 years old. And she goes, I heard what happened to you. That's fucking terrible. That's fucking terrible. It's awful. And then she just walked away. And I was like, thank you. Like, yes, it is. Like that for some reason landed because I was like, you don't have to try to fix it. And I think that was like the main thing with empathy is it's like, you don't have to match it. You don't have to change it. You don't have to change what they're going through. You don't have to try to make it better. Just hold space for it.
I like want to give you a standing ovation. That is the best advice for supporting someone through cancer, because I've had the same thing. Like people will be like, oh, you're fatigued from treatment. Like I'm really tired. I did a really hard workout yesterday. And I'm like, it's taking everything in my being not to strangle you right now.
Right.
You know?
And it's like, you know, that they're trying and it's like, you are like, oh, like, I get it. I get what you're doing, but it's just like, it's not it. It's not it.
Right. Exactly.
I've learned a lot just through listening to Kiara and her experience and all of kind of the learning lessons from afar that she shared with me. And it's like similar, like right before recording with us, I made the mistake of not realizing that Tommy had already passed. I was listening to podcasts and reading your book and I was like, oh, Tommy's still here.
Right.
And then really you brought it up and I was just like, this is my place to just not try to fix or correct it all, but just to say sorry and see what else you have to explain or to give me too. And I'm just like, all right, let's back off of this.
No, and that was so well received. I really thought that you handled that beautifully. And I was like, but yeah, it's like, you don't have to try to fix it. And that's like, that has been something that has been a really difficult thing for me to learn. And I think it's helped me just be a better friend in general for people just going through anything. Definitely made me a better partner, because I mean, if I had to pick one thing that I worked on in therapy, it was probably that. And so it's like, I think like if you can tap into what it feels like to just be there and just receive, you're going to just be an incredible support for your person going through what they're going through.
No doubt. So Jess, why don't you share where you've been talking about lots of great things. You have your cards, you have the planner out there, you have a book out there as well. Where can people find those things? And then also, if they want to follow along in your journey and hear more from you as well, where's a good place to connect?
Yeah. So my website is 5.post.com, 5 spelled out, 5 FIVEDOTPOST. I didn't realize when I made the name that that is confusing to say out loud, because people just do like a period. Anyways, 5.post.com and at 5.post on Instagram. Those are Instagram is like the main place that I am. I'm there kind of like checking in every day. You can buy my book, The Better Together, on Amazon. And the planner you can buy with my cards on my website. You can also buy the Better Together on my website, but a lot of people buy it on Amazon because it's just free shipping, easy, you know.
Makes sense. And then we love to end with the question, through your experience, what does great support look like?
What does great support look like? I feel like great support looks like being the person that can receive the heavy stuff that they need to say, again, without trying to fix it. Like, you don't just be the person that can hear the really hard stuff without even you don't even have to say anything, but like sometimes it just needs to be said, and maybe they don't have someone to say it to, or maybe it's the first time they're saying it, and just be that person who can hear it. And yeah, I think that's it.
Well, Jess, we really, really appreciate you coming on the Support Report. Once again, Jess Walker, 5.post.com. And if that is confusing, just hit the show notes. There'll be links there. But sincerely, from the Be Present organization, myself and Kiara, really, really sorry about the passing of Tommy. But you have some incredible things. I'm really glad that you got to shape a little bit of the life ahead, and you're still plugging along and helping other people fight in their journey as well. So Jess, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed this chat.